If this story touched your heart, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing our stories reach around the world. Was there a moment that made you tear up or smile? Drop it in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another chapter. A brand new story, even more unforgettable, is coming tomorrow. Turn on the bell so you're the first to hear it. Your support means everything to us. Let's keep this little corner of stories alive, together. Madison Hart had always lived her life like it was a dream, one filled with designer clothes, champagne brunches, and late nights that bled into early mornings. At just 20, she already had everything most girls only saw on Instagram: a luxury penthouse in downtown Miami, a convertible gifted on her 18th birthday, and a wallet that never said no. Or so she thought. One evening, after storming out of a beach party and flying back home in frustration, Madison entered her condo only to find that her keycard no longer worked. Confused, she pulled out her phone, only to discover her credit cards were declined. Panic rose in her chest. Something was very, very wrong. After dozens of unanswered calls to her mother, she did something she hadn't done in months. She went home. Not to her condo, but to the family estate nestled far away from the city lights. When she walked through the front doors, the silence was heavier than she remembered. Her mother was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, eyes colder than the marble floor. "You're finally home," she said without emotion. "We need to talk." Madison's stomach sank. What's going on? Why can't I access my accounts? Why was my car towed? This has to be a mistake. Her mother didn't blink. It's not a mistake. You've been given years of freedom, but not once did you ask yourself what comes next. You party, you shop, you drift. But the world doesn't work that way forever, Madison. Tears welled up in Madison's eyes, but her mother continued. This family has protected you, paid for your every whim, but your grandparents had a plan, and it's time you honor it. Madison could barely breathe. What plan? There was a long pause before the words landed like a thunderclap. You're getting married. Madison let out a stunned laugh. What? To Julian Hayes, your grandfather's former protege. He's 34, successful, stable. Everything you're not. The arrangement was set years ago, and we agreed it was time to follow through. You can't be serious, Madison said, backing away. You're selling me off like I'm property. Her mother softened, just slightly. You want your freedom back? Your condo, your lifestyle? Then this is the cost. He won't control you. He doesn't even want a wife. But he agreed out. Of respect to the family, consider it a trade. Madison stood frozen, rage and disbelief colliding in her chest. She was being forced into a life she didn't choose, tied to a man she didn't even know. But as she looked around the cold, grand house that once felt like home, she realized something chilling. She had no power left. No money. No place to go. Only one door remained open, and beyond it, a stranger named Julian Hayes was waiting to become her husband. The wedding was quiet. No music. No guests. Just papers, a pen, and two people who barely knew each other. Julian Hayes didn't smile when he said, "I do." He didn't look at Madison the way grooms were supposed to look. He looked at her like she was a contract. Signed, sealed, delivered. Madison wore white, but she didn't feel like a bride. She felt like she was being sentenced. The next day, she moved into Julian's penthouse, a sleek, modern apartment that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Everything was perfect, spotless, cold, just like him. They barely spoke. He left early every morning and came home late at night. When he did speak, it was with a tone so measured, it felt like every word had been edited before it left his mouth. "You can order anything you need," he said on the third day, sliding a new black card across the table. "The house staff will handle the rest." Madison didn't even reach for it. "I don't need your money," she said. Julian looked at her, eyebrows raised. "Then why are you here?" The question hit harder than she expected. She didn't answer. Days passed like that. Quiet, awkward, empty. She wandered the halls of their home like a ghost, pretending not to care, pretending the silence didn't crush her just a little more every hour. One night, she finally snapped. "No," she said, standing in front of the TV he wasn't even watching. "I didn't choose this either. You act like I begged to be your wife." Julian didn't flinch. He looked up slowly, his eyes unreadable. "I don't recall dragging you down the aisle." Madison scoffed, arms crossed. "And I don't recall marrying a robot." For a moment, she thought she saw something crack behind his eyes. Pain, maybe. But it was gone too fast. "You want warmth?" he said, his voice dropping. "Then maybe marry someone who knows how to feel it." Silence. She didn't move. He didn't either. That night they slept in the same bed, back to back, like strangers forced to share space in a world they didn't ask for. But Madison couldn't sleep. Her mind kept spinning. Who was this man? Why did he shut the world out so easily? What happened to him? And why did a small, stupid part of her want to be the one who could melt the ice around him? In the dark, Julian lay awake too. He could hear her breathing. He knew she was angry. Knew she hated this as much as he did. But he also knew something she didn't. He was far more afraid of loving her than of hating her, because he had loved once before, and it destroyed him. Madison Hart wasn't the type to fold easily, but in Julian Hayes' world, she felt invisible. Days blurred together like gray smudges on a glass window. No warmth, no laughter, just passing glances and civil nods over coffee they never drank together. But on the 17th day of marriage, something shifted. It started with an empty breakfast table. The housekeeper had called in sick, and Madison found herself standing in the kitchen, barefoot, staring at a dozen labeled ingredients that might as well have been from another planet. She didn't know why, but she cracked the eggs, burned the toast, and ruined 2 pans trying to make something edible. It wasn't good, but it was something. That night, she left a plate outside Julian's office door. No note, no explanation. Just a small olive branch on ceramic. She didn't expect anything, but the next morning, the plate was clean and in the dishwasher. It wasn't much, but it was a crack in the wall, so she kept going. She watched videos, read cookbooks, messed up a lot, but slowly, she got better. Meals became less of a mess and more of a rhythm. She started setting the table for 2, even if he rarely showed up. And when he did, he said little, but he ate. She started waking up early, doing laundry, organizing the space she once resented, not because she had to, but because it felt good. To do something right? Julian noticed. He didn't say it, but he lingered longer at breakfast. He asked once if the pasta had cream or cheese in it. And one afternoon, after a long phone call in his study, he said, "That was good," about her lemon chicken. It was the first compliment he'd given her, and it felt like fireworks inside her chest. But it wasn't all progress. There were still nights he came home late without a word. Still mornings he walked past her like she was wallpaper. Madison tried not to care, but her heart was learning to hope, and hope hurt. Then one night, after a rainstorm, the power went out. The penthouse dimmed into silence, and for the first time in weeks, Madison and Julian found themselves in the same room, candlelight flickering across their faces. "Do you always avoid people this hard?" she asked softly, curled up on the couch. Julian looked at her. Really looked at her. "Only when I'm scared of needing them," he admitted. She blinked. "Are you scared of needing me?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. In that moment, everything changed. Not because they kissed, because they didn't. Not because he touched her, but because, for once, he let her touch the truth. And that was more intimate than any kiss. Madison knew then this marriage might have started as a deal, but slowly, painfully, it was becoming something real, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. Not without a fight. Just when Madison thought things were finally changing, she saw her. It was a sunny Thursday afternoon. Madison had gone out alone for the first time in weeks. Nothing special, just a quiet stroll through the local farmer's market. She needed fresh air, a moment to think. That's when a voice stopped. Her. Madison, right? She turned around. The woman standing before her was tall, striking, perfectly put together in a way that felt effortless. Her eyes, though kind on the surface, carried something colder underneath. Something calculating. "I'm Celeste Monroe," the woman said. "Julian's ex-fiancée." Madison's heart dropped. Celeste didn't flinch. "I was in town for a few days and thought we should talk. Just the two of us." Everything inside Madison screamed to walk away, but her pride held her in place. They found a corner table at a nearby cafe, and from the first sip of coffee, the conversation turned sharp. "I know Julian," Celeste began, folding her hands neatly. "I know how he thinks, what he needs, what he pushes away. And I know what he still feels." Madison stared, trying to stay calm. "He doesn't talk about you." Celeste smiled, that subtle kind of smirk only a woman with history could pull off. "Of course he doesn't. That's what makes it so easy for him to pretend he's over me." "Why are you really here?" Madison asked, voice tight. Celeste leaned in. "To remind you what you already know. He doesn't love you. You were convenient, a contract, a placeholder." The words struck like knives, each one sharper than the last. Madison tried to push back. "Julian's changed. We're building something." Celeste's eyes darkened. "You think you've changed him in a few months? I spent nearly a decade with that man. I know the way he shuts down, the way he punishes himself. And I also know he doesn't let go of the past, especially when the past is me." Madison's breath hitched. "He told me you left him." "I did," Celeste nodded, "to chase a dream he couldn't support. But now I'm back, and I'm not running this time." For a second, Madison forgot how to breathe. "I'm not here to ruin your life," Celeste added, voice softening. "But if Julian still loves me, and I think he does, he'll leave you the moment I ask him to." Madison stood up, heart pounding, vision blurring. She walked away without another word, but the damage was done. Celeste had planted a seed of doubt, one that Madison couldn't rip out. That night, Julian came home late again. She didn't ask where he'd been. She couldn't. Instead, she went to bed early, curled up beneath the covers, and stared at the ceiling for hours. What if everything they had was an illusion? What if the walls Julian had torn down were already being rebuilt? What if she was never meant to win his heart in the first place? Madison didn't sleep that night. Her body was still, but her mind ran wild, haunted by Celeste's words, Julian's silence, and her own fears that maybe she'd just been living in someone else's love story. By morning, she was gone. She didn't pack a suitcase. She didn't leave a note. She just grabbed her coat, her phone, and left, running not from Julian, but from the version of herself that was too scared to ask him the truth. She ended up at her best friend's apartment. Verena opened the door, took one look at Madison's pale face, and didn't ask a single question. She just wrapped her in a blanket and handed her a mug of hot tea. "I can't compete with a ghost," Madison finally whispered. "I can't stay in a marriage where I'm always looking over my shoulder." "What happened?" Verena asked. Madison didn't answer. She didn't need to. The heartbreak was written all over her face. Hours passed. Then a day. Then another. Madison didn't text. Julian didn't call. The silence said everything. And yet, nothing at all. Until one night, the door burst open. Julian stood there, eyes red, hair a mess, chest heaving like he'd just run through a storm. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Don't leave me." Madison froze, mug halfway to her lips. "You were gone," he said, stepping closer. "And I couldn't breathe. I thought, God, I thought you left for good." "You didn't come after me," she whispered. "I didn't know if I had the right." Silence. Julian dropped to one knee, not to propose, but to beg. "Celeste came to see you, didn't she?" Madison nodded. "She said you'd leave me for her." Julian shook his head slowly. "She was part of my past. She left. And yes, I loved her once, but not anymore." His eyes locked with Madison's. "You're not a placeholder, Madison. You're the reason I'm standing here willing to try again. You made this cold house feel like home. You made me want more." A tear slid down her cheek. "I don't want convenient. I want real. I want you." Her hands trembled as she reached out for him. Julian stood cupping her face with both hands. "Love you," he said. "I didn't think I could again. But you made me believe in love that doesn't hurt, that doesn't leave." Madison's voice cracked. "Even if I'm scared?" He smiled. "I'll be scared with you." She collapsed into his arms, sobbing, not from pain, but from relief. From knowing, finally, she hadn't been chasing someone else's memory. She was building something new. A month later, they stood before family and friends under a canopy of string lights in their backyard. Not a business arrangement, not a contract, but a choice. This time, when Julian kissed his bride, the world didn't disappear. It finally made sense. What do you think about Madison and Julian's journey? Do you believe love can grow even from something that started out cold, arranged, and unwanted? Have you ever met someone who changed your heart just by showing up for you, little by little, until you realized they were the one? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Julian truly moved on from Celeste? Was Madison brave to stay and fight? Or should she have walked away when doubt came knocking? And if you were in her shoes, what would you have done? Leave a comment below and share your heart with us. Let's talk about second chances, quiet love, and the beauty of choosing someone every single day. Your voice matters here, and your insight might even help someone else who's going through a similar story in real life. And while you're here, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for tomorrow's next emotional chapter. We post a new story every day, crafted to make you feel. Thank you for being here, for listening, and most of all, for caring.